The sky over the small village of Daripur was painted with shades of orange and pink as the sun began its descent. The air smelled of damp earth and burning wood, mixing with the scent of freshly made roti from the mud brick houses. In one of those tiny homes, Aisha sat on the cold, uneven floor staring at the torn hem of her dress. She had stitched it so many times that the fabric was barely holding together. Her father, Baba Jan, sat across from her, his face lined with exhaustion. "Aisha, beta," he said gently, though his voice was heavy with worry. "We have no choice. The landlord is threatening to throw us out. If we don't pay him soon, we'll have nowhere to go." Aisha swallowed the lump in her throat. She knew what was coming. She had heard the whispers in the village, the quiet conversations between her mother and the women at the well. "We found a groom for you," her mother finally said, stepping into the dimly lit room. "His name is Raza. He's a good man. He works hard, but he is poor, just like us." Aisha's heart sank. She had dreamed of love, of a future where she could escape this life of endless struggle, but instead she was being handed over to a stranger, someone just as helpless against fate as she was. "But Amma," she started, her voice barely above a whisper. Her mother placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes life doesn't give us choices, Aisha. Sometimes we must do what is necessary to survive." Aisha's eyes burned, but she nodded. She had never disobeyed her parents before, and she wouldn't start now. The wedding was simple, almost too simple. There were no extravagant decorations, no grand feasts, just a small gathering of villagers, some borrowed jewelry, and a nikah performed under the dim glow of lanterns. Raza stood before her, tall and quiet, his face unreadable. He was a laborer, they said, working odd jobs in the nearby town. His clothes were plain, his hands rough from work. But his eyes held something strange, something she couldn't quite place. That night, as she sat in the small hut that was now her home, she watched Raza from the corner of her eye. He sat by the window, looking out into the night, deep in thought. "You don't talk much," she finally said, breaking the silence. He turned to her, a faint smile on his lips. "I speak when there's something worth saying." His voice was calm, steady, like a man who had nothing to fear. But why? A man like him should be worried about feeding his wife, about surviving, and yet he sat there as if the weight of the world didn't touch him. Something about him didn't add up, and Aisha was going to find out what it was. Days passed, and Aisha tried to settle into her new life. The village was small and the routine was predictable. In the mornings she would wake early, gather water from the well, and prepare food. In the afternoons, Raza would leave for his work, always returning late, tired, but never speaking much about what he did. There was something about his silence that intrigued Aisha, but she kept her thoughts to herself. She knew better than to ask too many questions. One evening, a month into their marriage, Raza came home later than usual. Aisha had already prepared dinner, but he barely touched his food. Instead, he sat in the corner, staring out of the window, lost in thought. "Raza," Aisha ventured, her voice tentative. "Where do you go every day?" Raza turned to her, his eyes soft but distant. "I work," he said simply before turning back to the window. Aisha couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his story. The next morning, as Raza left for work, she followed him from a distance. She knew she was risking trouble, but something in her gut told her she had to know more. Raza walked for miles down dusty paths and through fields until he reached the edge of the village. There, hidden behind a large cluster of trees, was a luxurious black car. It gleamed in the sunlight, a stark contrast to the dusty roads of Daripur. Aisha hid behind the trees, her heart pounding as she watched Raza approach the car. A man stepped out of the car. He was dressed in a sharp suit, his expression cold and businesslike. Raza greeted him with a nod, and the two men spoke in low tones. Aisha couldn't hear the conversation, but she could see the exchange. At one point, Raza handed over a small envelope to the man, who took it without a word. As the man drove away, Raza turned and walked back toward the village, but this time Aisha didn't follow. She stood frozen, the pieces starting to fall into place. Her husband wasn't just a poor laborer. There was something more, something hidden beneath his humble exterior. That night she confronted him. "Raza, who were you meeting today?" she asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Raza didn't look at her. "It's not important." "Don't lie to me," Aisha insisted, her patience wearing thin. "I saw you with that man, the car, the envelope." Raza's eyes darkened, and for the first time, Aisha saw a flicker of something she couldn't identify in his gaze. He stood up slowly, walking toward her. "I didn't want you to know this way," he said quietly. "But you deserve the truth." Aisha held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest. "I'm not just a laborer," Raza continued. "I'm a businessman. I made my fortune through hard work. I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want you to think I married you for your family's money, or for some other reason. But now you know." Aisha's mind reeled. The man, who had appeared so humble, so quiet, was actually a secret billionaire. How could she have missed the signs? She stared at him, trying to process everything. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to change how you saw me," he replied, his voice low. "I wanted you to love me for who I am, not for what I have." Aisha took a step back, her heart racing. The life she had known, the life she had accepted, was about to change forever. But how would she adjust to this new reality? Would she accept the truth about her husband, or would the mystery surrounding him drive them apart? The days that followed were a whirlwind for Aisha. She spent sleepless nights trying to come to terms with the revelation about Raza. The man she thought was just another poor laborer struggling to survive was in fact a wealthy businessman. His secret life had turned everything she knew upside down. But what troubled her most was the way Raza had kept this from her, the way he had hidden so much. She avoided him for a few days, needing space to think, to process. Raza gave her the distance she needed, though his eyes followed her wherever she went. He was patient, waiting for her to come to him. One afternoon, as Aisha sat by the well, deep in thought, her mother came to find her. The older woman had a concerned look on her face, her hands wringing the edge of her dupatta nervously. "Aisha Beta," her mother began softly, sitting beside her. "Is everything okay between you and Raza?" Aisha met her mother's gaze, a mixture of frustration and confusion in her eyes. "I don't know, Amma. He's not who I thought he was. He's hiding so much from me. He's not the poor man I married." Her mother nodded slowly. "You always knew life wouldn't be easy. But you made a commitment, Aisha. And sometimes, even when things don't make sense, we must trust in our vows." "But I don't understand, Amma," Aisha replied, her voice shaking. "Why didn't he tell me? Why did he keep this secret from me? What else is he hiding?" Her mother took her hand, her touch warm and reassuring. "People keep secrets for many reasons. But love is about more than what we see on the outside, more than money or status. It's about trust, and sometimes that trust is tested in ways we don't expect." Aisha didn't answer immediately. She stared down at the water, watching her reflection ripple with the passing breeze. Her mother's words lingered in her mind, but they didn't offer any answers to the questions swirling in her heart. Was this love? Could she accept Raza for who he truly was, even if it meant facing the truth of his secret life? That evening, as the sun began to set, Aisha finally decided to confront Raza once again. She found him sitting by the window as usual, his eyes lost in the distance. She walked toward him slowly, her footsteps light on the wooden floor. "Raza," she began, her voice steady but her heart heavy. "I need to know everything. No more secrets." Raza turned to her, his expression unreadable, but there was a vulnerability in his eyes that she hadn't noticed before. He stood up and walked toward her, taking her hands in his. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said quietly. "I didn't want you to think that I was some kind of man who uses people. I kept it from you because I thought it would change everything, and I didn't want to lose you." Aisha swallowed hard, trying to hold back tears. "Raza, I don't know. If I can understand this, all I wanted was a simple life. I never imagined this world of money and secrets. It's too much for me." Raza's grip tightened around her hands, his voice desperate. "Aisha, please." I love you. I've always loved you. This is just part of who I am. But I'm still the man you married, the one who wants to build a life with you." Aisha looked up at him, her mind a blur of emotions. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to accept the man in front of her, the man who had shown her so much care and respect. But the weight of the truth was too much to bear. "I don't know what to do, Raza," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I need time. I need to figure out what I want." Raza nodded slowly, his eyes filled with sorrow. "I understand. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here waiting." And so Aisha was left standing at the crossroads of her life. The man she had married had secrets, secrets that could change everything. But was she strong enough to face them, to accept the man who was both her husband and someone completely different than the person she thought she knew? Weeks passed, and Aisha found herself in a constant state of turmoil. She spent her days working in the fields, her hands busy, but her mind was always on Raza. She couldn't escape the thoughts of him, his hidden wealth, his secret meetings, the world that seemed to exist beyond their small village. At night, she would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she had made the right choice in marrying him. Raza, as promised, gave her the space she needed. He didn't press her for answers, didn't rush her to make a decision. But she could feel his presence, his quiet patience, as though he was waiting for her to come to some conclusion. Aisha knew that if she didn't confront her feelings soon, the distance between them would only grow wider. One day, as the village was preparing for a small festival, Aisha found herself standing at the edge of the field, watching the children play. She had not seen Raza for several days. He had been away on business, though she wasn't sure what kind of business he had. He hadn't told her where he went or what he did. He had only given her vague assurances that everything was fine. It was then that she saw him walking toward her. His figure stood out against the colorful backdrop of the festival, his dark clothes contrasting with the bright hues of the celebration. Aisha's heart skipped a beat, her emotions torn between the desire to be close to him and the uncertainty. That clouded her mind. He stopped in front of her, looking down at her with a soft, knowing expression. "How are you?" he asked, his voice gentle. Aisha hesitated, not knowing how to answer. "I don't know anymore," she admitted. "I'm trying, Raza. I really am. But there's so much that I don't understand." Raza nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know. I should have told you sooner. I should have been honest from the start. But I wanted you to choose me, not my wealth. I wanted you to love me for the person I am, not the man you thought I was." Aisha's chest tightened. "But why did you keep this from me? Why didn't you trust me enough to share it with me? I could have helped you, Raza." "I didn't want to burden you," Raza replied, his voice low. "I thought that if you knew, it would change everything. That you might look at me differently. I didn't want to lose you." Aisha swallowed hard. "But you did lose me, Raza. Not in the way you think, but in the way I feel. I don't know if I can ever trust you the way I did before." The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken pain. Raza reached out, gently taking her hand in his fingers warm against her skin. "Aisha, I never wanted to hurt you. You're everything to me. Please don't let this secret tear us apart." Aisha pulled her hand back slowly, her gaze drifting toward the ground. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she whispered. There was a long silence as Raza stood still, his face a mask of regret. Finally he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then I'll wait. As long as it takes. I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I love you. And I'll give you the time you need." Aisha looked at him then, her heart torn. She didn't know if she could forgive him, but the sincerity in his eyes made her question everything she had believed about their relationship. Was this love? Or was it simply a tangled mess of lies and secrets? The festival continued around them, the sounds of music and laughter filling the air, but for Aisha, everything had stopped. She was stuck, caught between the life she had known and the man who now stood before her, a stranger with a familiar face. The days stretched on, and though the village was alive with the noise and joy of the festival, Aisha felt as if she were living in a different world altogether. The simple pleasures of life, gathering water, tending to the fire, sharing meals with the women in the village, felt distant now, overshadowed by the weight of her feelings. The question of Raza's truth, of who he really was, gnawed at her constantly. One evening, a few weeks after their confrontation, Aisha found herself sitting alone by the river, the gentle sound of the flowing water mingling with the soft whispers of the wind. She hadn't seen Raza all day, and the quietness felt oppressive. It was as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for her to make a decision. She didn't realize he had approached until she heard his voice, calm and steady, breaking the silence. "Aisha," Raza said softly, "I need to ask you something." She looked up at him, her heart heavy. "What is it, Raza?" He stepped closer, sitting beside her on the grass, his presence filling the space between them. "I know I've made mistakes. I know I kept things from you, and I've hurt you in ways I can't take back. But I still love you. I want to build a life with you, not based on lies or secrets, but on the truth. I know it won't be easy, but I'm willing to fight for us. For you." Aisha's heart thudded in her chest. His words were simple, but they were everything she had needed to hear. He was offering her honesty, offering her a chance to start again, to rebuild trust where it had been broken. And yet, the decision still felt too large, too overwhelming. "Raza," she began, her voice trembling, "I don't know if I can ever be the woman you want me to be. I don't know if I can forget the fear, the uncertainty, but I don't want to lose you either." Raza looked at her, his gaze intense but filled with understanding. "You don't have to forget, Aisha. Just allow us to move forward. Allow me to prove to you that my love for you is real." Aisha felt her resolve waver. She had never been one to make quick decisions, especially when it came to matters of the heart. But for the first time in a long while, she felt a spark of hope. Raza had shown her his vulnerability, his fear, and now it was her turn to decide if she could take a leap of faith. She reached out, taking his hand, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to believe that love, true love, could be something worth fighting for. "I'll try," Aisha whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "I'll try, Raza. But we have to take it one step at a time. No more secrets, no more lies." Raza squeezed her hand gently, his face breaking into a soft smile. "One step at a time," he agreed. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the river. For a moment, everything felt right. The world, the village, their lives, they all seemed to pause as if giving them the time to heal, to move forward together. And as Aisha sat beside Raza, she knew that the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges. There would be doubts. But for the first time, she felt ready to face them, ready to embrace the life she had once thought was beyond her reach. The life with Raza, the man who was both her stranger and her love.